This is part 2 of Where Have You Gone, Charming Billy by Tim O'Brien. We're continuing on page 67. We stopped right at where this big blue box is right here, so we are going to continue at this point. We want to remind ourselves what exactly has happened and how Paul Berlin is trying to deal. In your mind, I want you to think of some of the ways that Paul Berlin is trying to deal with the fact that it's his first day in war and he's already watched someone die. Some of these ways would be counting and changing those counting of steps into money. Also using the song. He's also thinking about how he's going to talk about the war after it. So now we're going to continue reading the story. We have to remember that Billy Boy Watkins has died, and it's only Paul Berlin's first day at the war, and he's watched this young man die, and he really just can't get this image out of his head. Private First Class Paul Berlin walked carefully, stretching ahead of him like dark beads on an invisible chain. The string of shadow soldiers, whose names he did not know, moved with the silence and slow grace of smoke. Here again, we have the beauty of alliteration with string, shadow, soldiers, silence, slow, smoke. We also have the stretching here. We have all these S's in here, okay? And one of the things that I think of you most of the time is we either have the S's, we end up with the hiss, or we have the S's and we think of shh. So the way it comes through here is it seems like it should be very quiet as we're reading through this. Now and again, moonlight was reflected off a machine gun or a wristwatch. But mostly the soldiers were quiet and hidden and far away seeming in a peaceful night. Strangers on a long street, and he felt quite separate from them, as if trailing behind like the caboose on a night train, pulled along by inertia, sleepwalking, an afterthought to the war. So he walked carefully, counting his steps. When he counted to 3,485, the column stopped. One by one, the soldiers knelt or squatted down. The grass along the path was wet. Private First Class Paul Berlin lay back and turned his head so that he could look at the dew with his eyes closed. Another trick to forget the war. He might have slept. I wasn't afraid, he was screaming or dreaming, facing his father's stern eyes. I wasn't afraid, he was saying. When his eyes opened, a soldier was sitting beside him, quietly chewing a stick of double mint gum. You sleeping again? The soldier whispered. No, said Private First Class Paul Berlin. The soldier grunted, chewing his gum. Then he twisted the cap off his canteen, took a swallow, and handed it through the dark. Take some, he whispered. Thanks. You're the new guy. Yes. He did not want to admit it, being new to the war. The soldier grunted and handed him a stick of gum. Chew it quiet, okay? Don't blow no bubbles or nothing. Thanks. I won't. He could not make out the man's face in the shadows. They sat still, and Private First Class Paul Berlin chewed the gum until all the sugars were gone. Then the soldier said, Bad day today, buddy. Private First Class Paul Berlin nodded wisely, but he did not speak. Taking a pause here, I want to point out every single time that we mention Private First Class Paul Berlin, it mentions his whole name. Instead of turning this into PFC, which is something that is commonly done, or referring to him just as Paul, or PFC Berlin, we have the entire thing written out. This is done on purpose. The purpose of doing this over and over again, this is called repetition. The reason to do this is to draw attention to the fact that he is a Private First Class. And the point of Private First Class is this is the first official title that you get when you enter. We're supposed to be reminded how young this man is and how he is so new to the war. So if we keep saying this over and over again, we're reminded of it. Don't think it's always so bad, the soldier whispered. Don't want to scare you. You'll get used to it soon enough. They've been fighting wars a long time. You get used to it. Yeah, you will. They were quiet a while. And the night was quiet. No crickets or birds, and it was hard to imagine it was truly a war. He searched for the soldier's face, but could not find it. It did not matter much. Even if he saw the fellow's face, he would not know the name. And even if he knew the name, it would not matter much. Haven't got the time, the soldier whispered. No, rats. Don't matter, really. Goes faster if you don't know the time anyhow. Sure. What's your name, buddy? Paul. Nice to meet you, he said, and in the dark, beside the path, they shook hands. Mine's Toby. Everybody calls me Buffalo, though. The soldier's hand was strangely warm and soft, but it was a very big hand. Sometimes they just call me Buff, he said. And again, they were quiet. They lay in the grass and waited. The moon was very high now and very bright, and they were waiting for cloud cover. The soldier suddenly snorted. What is it? Nothing, he said. They snorted again. Bloody heart attack, the soldier said. Can't get over it. Old Billy Boy croaking like from a lousy heart attack. A heart attack! Can you even believe it? The idea of it made Private First Class Paul Berlin smile. He couldn't help it. Ever hear of such a thing? Not till now, said Private First Class Paul Berlin, still smiling. Me neither, said the soldier in the dark. Dying of a heart attack. Didn't know him, did you? No. Tough as nails. Yeah. And what happens? Heart attack. Can you imagine it? Yes, said Private First Class Paul Berlin. He wanted to laugh. I can imagine it. And he imagined it clearly. He giggled. He couldn't help it. He imagined Billy's father opening the telegram. Deep, 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 deep. Sorry to inform you that your son, Billy Boy, was yesterday scared to death in action in the Republic of Vietnam, valiantly succumbing to a heart attack suffered while under enormous stress, and it is with great sympathy that... He giggled again. He rolled onto his belly and pressed his face into his arms. His body was shaking with giggles. The big soldier hissed at him to shut up. But he could not stop giggling and remembering the hot afternoon and poor Billy Boy and how they'd been drinking Coca-Cola from bright red aluminum cans and how they'd started on the day's march. And how a little while later poor Billy Boy stepped on the mine and how it made a tiny little sound, poof, and how Billy Boy stood there with his mouth wide open, looking down at where his foot had been blown off. And how finally Billy Boy sat down very casually, not saying a word, with his foot lying behind him, most of it still in the boot. He giggled louder. He could not stop. He bit his arm, trying to stifle it, but remembering. War's over, Billy, the men had said in consolation, but Billy Boy got scared and started crying and said he was about to die. Nonsense, the medic said, Doc Parrott. But Billy Boy kept bawling, tightening up, his face going pale and transparent, and his veins popping out. Scared stiff, even when Doc Parrott stuck him with the morphine, Billy Boy kept crying. Shut up, the big soldier hissed. But Private First Class Paul Berlin could not stop. Giggling and remembering, he covered his mouth. His eyes stung, remembering how it was when Billy Boy died of fright. Shut up! But he could not stop giggling. The same way Billy Boy could not stop bawling that afternoon. Afterward, Doc Parrott has explained, you see, Billy Boy really died of a heart attack. He was scared he was going to die, so scared he had himself a heart attack. And that's what really killed him. Seen it before. So they wrapped Billy in a plastic poncho, his eyes still wide open and scared stiff. And they carried him over the meadow to a rice paddy. And then, when the medevac helicopter arrived, they carried him through the paddy and put him aboard. And the mortar rounds were falling everywhere. And the helicopter pulled up, and Billy Boy came tumbling out, falling slowly, and then faster, and the paddy water sprayed up as if Billy Boy had just executed a long and dangerous dive, as if trying to escape Graves registration, where he would be tagged and sent home under a flag, dead of a heart attack. "Shut up!" the soldier hissed. But Paul Berlin could not stop giggling, remembering, scared to death. Later, they waded in after him, probing for Billy Boy with their rifle butts, elegantly and delicately probing for Billy Boy in the stinking paddy, singing some of them. "Where have you gone, Billy Boy, Billy Boy? Oh, where have you gone, charming Billy?" Then they found him, green and covered with algae, his eyes still wide open and scared stiff, dead of a heart attack, suffered while... "Shut up!" the soldier said loudly, shaking him. But Private First Class Paul Berlin could not stop. The giggles were caught in his throat, drowning him in his own laughter. Scared to death, like Billy Boy. Giggling, lying on his back, he saw the moon move, or the clouds moving across the moon. Wounded in action, dead of fright. A fine war story. He would tell it to his father, how Billy Boy had been scared to death, never letting on. He could not stop. The soldier smothered him. He tried to fight back, but he was weak from the giggles. So Paul Berlin here has been laughing at this, and it's not really a funny laugh. It's a, I'm so uncomfortable, I'm so scared, I don't know what to do, I don't know how to be, laugh. And although we sit and think about it that it's ironic and it's not okay that he's doing it, we kind of understand it. The moon was under the clouds, and the column was moving. The soldier helped him up. "You okay now, buddy?" "Sure." "What was so bloody funny?" "Nothing. You can get killed laughing that way." I know that. You gotta stay calm, buddy." The soldier handed him his rifle. "Half the battle, just staying calm. You'll get better at it," he said. "Come on now." He turned away, and Private First Class Paul Berlin hurried after him. He was still shivering. He would do better once he reached the sea, he thought, still smiling a little. A funny war story that he would tell his father. How Billy Boy Watkins was scared to death. A good joke. But even when he smelled salt and heard the sea, he could not stop being afraid. So is it a surprise that our concept that our sea here that was supposed to be our safety isn't really safety? Okay? He's still scared. He thought everything would be okay when he reached it. It didn't really work that way, did it for him? Literary link. I Like a Look of Agony by Emily Dickinson. I like a look of agony because I know it's true. Men do not sham convulsion nor simulate a throe. The eyes glaze once, and that is death, impossible to feign. The beads upon the forehead, by homely anguish strung. Looking at the next page, we're going to look at the assignment. So your assignment, your questions that you need to do. You need to do number 1. You need to do the comprehension check with all 3 of the bullets. You need to do number 3. You need to do number 4. You need to do number 5. You need to do number 6. Number 8. Number 9. If you turn the page, I'd like you to do the exercise here. Vocabulary in action. So, reminder, page 71. 1, the comprehension check. 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9. Turning the page on page 72, the vocabulary in action, which is 1 through 10. Also remember, we want to make sure we go back and we identify and define all of our words to know, which are casually, conical, consolation, diffuse, elegantly, execute, inertia, primitive, silhouetted, transparent. And then remember, we were adding to it main characters, minor characters, and inference. These will all be on the quiz. So make sure that you understand the definitions and how to use them in order to complete the assignment as well as to do well on the quiz. Remember, if you have any questions, you can always email me at simiL@gomaroons.org. There will be another video following where I will make sure that we do some reviewing in order to be prepared for the quiz. See you soon.